The Cold War propaganda was that we're only doing this because of the Soviet Union. We would not be we're with you, libertarians. We want to just love liberty and prosperity and be a peaceful, normal country. But there's the Soviet Union, so we have to do all of this right there. It's called The Party and the Deep Blue Sea, which was a piece that Buckley wrote in 1952. So if you think this is 1952, this is 7 years after World War II wrapped up. Now, the two things are somewhat similar. But in this piece, Bill Buckley, essentially, he starts out by arguing that essentially libertarians are right. That he's like, listen, libertarianism, I mean, I don't think he would have called it that because that wasn't the term at the time, but he was basically like, look, you guys are right. The people who believe in individual liberty and limited government, you guys are correct. And he says some beautiful things. Like the first paragraph or two, you'd be like, oh my God, is this guy an anarcho-capitalist? Like he's just like, he's totally one of us. And so he's talking about, he's like, listen, the greatest battle in human history is between tyranny and liberty. The greatest instrument of tyranny is the state. And this is why we always, good conservatives always support the most restrained government you possibly can get. If government is totally restrained, then make sure you restrain it some more because it is the instrument of tyranny and all of this. And then there's the but. And his but is, but
other governments.
See, we got this Soviet Union. And since there's the Soviet Union, I mean, I understand what you libertarians are talking about, but here you have the biggest experiment in totalitarian government, the government running everything, and they're hell-bent on world domination. And so, listen, as much as it sucks, the only thing that can stand up to this threat is a government military. And so even though we really don't want to do any of this, we have to build up a huge military to roll back the threat of statism. And he even says in the...
So it sounds like what Dave is saying here is that the conservatism, because again, that's how he's talking about neoconservatism, that this neoconservatism idea of there's exceptions that we can do these regime change wars, these world police type of activities, is that, well, yeah, it would be nice if everybody was a libertarian, but everybody's not a libertarian, so we have to be non-libertarians also. And I don't know. Let's see what he says.
The article, which is why we got this from Googling totalitarian bureaucracy, because that's the line that he has. Let me see if I could find it here. But he literally says that we need to create a totalitarian bureaucracy within our own shores. Now, again, if you could get past how fucking retarded that argument is, it's literally like, it's like saying that there's a guy outside with a gun threatening to shoot me in the face, and so I have to shoot myself in the face with my own gun. Like,
yeah, it'll make a lot of sense. And it is another way to make it sounds to me like another way to make an excuse for doing things that don't follow your principles, but help your interests. And so we keep talking about how the Democrats, they only have positions, they don't have principles. They just have, this is what I think for this, for no other reason than it will help them get what they want. And sounds like Dave here is saying that the neocons are exactly the same way. That if you don't have principles, you can so easily be pulled into things that you don't believe in, and convince yourself that you do actually believe in them.
If you're creating a totalitarian bureaucracy in order to prevent a totalitarian bureaucracy from taking you over, then you've already lost by definition, right? So anyway, the argument made no sense. Bill Buckley's a very smart guy. He was not that stupid. He was just working for the CIA, and his job was to convince conservatives to support big military. So anyway, but so this is just my point to you about, I'm getting to my point about the NATO propaganda. But so essentially, just so people understand, the Cold War propaganda was that we're only doing this because of the Soviet Union. We would not be we're with you, libertarians. We want to just love liberty and prosperity and be a peaceful, normal country. But there's the Soviet Union, so we have to do all of this. And then in 1989, the Berlin Wall comes down. Germany is there's reunification in Germany. The Cold War ends, and so then all of those neoconservatives were like, okay, no more military-industrial complex. No more going around the world searching for monsters to destroy. Now,
so they're just like the gay community. They were like, oh well, we won, so now we've got to aim our guns at something else, and then we get the LGBT community.
We can once again embrace liberty and small government. Oh no, that's right. They were like, hey, we got to go see about Saddam Hussein. He's in a slant drilling conflict with his neighbor, Kuwait. You know, we had to go protect the democracy of Kuwait. So we had, and this is when they ramped up the first war under George H.W. Bush, the first war in Iraq, the first war, American war of my lifetime. I was a little kid. I was like 7 or 8 or something like that. What was it? It was in 91. I was born in 83. So I was 8. I remember George H.W. Bush announcing that we were invading on TV, but interrupted like The Simpsons or whatever. It's like, come on, let me get back to The Simpsons. Anyway.
And it's just continued. It's just been a status quo of, oh, this is what we do. And so to convince people that, no, we shouldn't fight this war because it's not in our direct interest is already an uphill battle. You have to argue back the idea that, well, even if it's not in our interest, we're America. That's what we do. You have to run that back, and that makes it more difficult.
My point is, if you had listened to the propaganda, the official propaganda, for 40 years during the Cold War, they would have told you that if the Soviet Union went away, NATO would also disband. The official propaganda, there was never any justification for why we would have NATO if there wasn't a Soviet Union. The whole point of NATO was to be an anti-Soviet military alliance. And essentially what happened, right, was that after World War II, all of Europe was destroyed. And the big victors who came out of it was America and Russia and the Soviet Union at the time. And now, okay, you could say England also won the war, but England was fucking wrecked. So the Soviet satellites were all destroyed. Russia itself had taken heavy fighting. America was kind of the only country who fought in World War II, but did all the fighting abroad. The fighting wasn't here. I mean, with the Pearl Harbor, out there, which really still isn't mainland the United States of America, but
that is way out there. And so this standard is made, and that's what we're fighting against.
Aside from the attack on Pearl Harbor, there were no attacks here. And so the thinking was, I'm not even saying this is justified, but the thinking was, okay, Europe is destroyed. The Soviet Union is this big superpower right here next to Europe. And so we have to, okay, we'll accept that they get the eastern half of Europe, but we're going to guarantee for the western half that if you guys move on this side, you're picking a fight with America.
And so that, anyone's asking, this is what I keep saying, why do we have NATO? The USSR does not exist. It should be to prevent the wars that we're in now. It should be to be like, okay, well, not 1 inch eastward, and Ukraine is or not inch one, you know what I mean? Not 1 inch towards Russia, and Ukraine is there. So if you guys take it, that's not NATO's business. And it's just because there's money to be made, people who don't understand, and people who are not willing to question. Should we be doing this? Well, no, the person that I voted for, or the person that I like, the person who says the things that I like, said that this is good. So it must be good. It's that simple. They're that simple.
Okay, well, that's all over. After 1991, the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. And all those Eastern European countries got their independence. What's the justification for NATO now? If you ask anyone, and I've asked several people, you just get a bunch of gobbledygook. It'll just be like the global community and working together and ensuring peace, keeping the peace and promoting, whatever. It's like they have nothing. There is no reason for us to be a part of NATO whatsoever. That we're not under post-World War II conditions. Europe has not been destroyed by a war, and they're poor, and we're the only rich country. Europe is rich. There's a bunch of rich countries in Europe. They can pay for their own defense. Vladimir Putin, as of right now, the latest estimate I saw is that Russia has about a $2 trillion GDP. Understand, that's how big and scary Russia is. Their entire GDP is less than a third of what our government spends every year.
That's wild. Shout out to M169. And that's what I've been saying. Yeah, a lot of people. That's the most frustrating part of it, is that it's not some outlandish theory. It's kind of like we're all in that position, wait, okay, maybe there's a reason, but I don't know what it is. What is that reason? As he said, you'll get a bunch of gobbledygook. Or he said, he said a gobbledygook. But you get a bunch of gobbledygook. And there's nothing. And because that gobbledygook is, number one, articulated well enough, and two, articulated enough and repeated enough, then people just buy into it. People are gullible. People are not only don't only just easily fall for things, but they are looking for answers to make everything simple. Oh, well, there's a war and NATO exists, and that we got to do that. That's the answer. I don't have to think about anything. The answers are already there. My brain is not needed for this. Good. That's what they really want. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. A shout out to the Funk Master General. Bam, 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 bam. Another $10 make you holler. My goodness. Thank you so very much. No question, no comment. Just pure love of the overlord. Thank you so very, very much out sponsoring yourself, sir. Very much appreciated. Thank you.
EP is less than a third of what our government spends every year. Forget our entire economy. There's no reason why Europe can't just have their own security plans that don't involve us. And by the way, we're $36 trillion in debt. We can't really afford to pick up everybody's security anymore. And
it's all funny money. It's all funny money.
The idea that we're going to not only pick up their security, but the security of the most further, like, we're not even talking about the original NATO plan. This is never guaranteeing security for Poland, let alone Ukraine. They were talking about, we didn't even guarantee security for East Germany. It was from the Elbe River west was what we guaranteed when the Soviet Union existed. And you're telling me now, when there is no communism, there is no Soviet threat, that we got to guarantee security for the Donbass region? This is just like, it's so insane. There is no one who has ever put forward a coherent defense for that position.
Yet they will still come forward and answer that question. Yes, absolutely, of course. Do you have no moral standing? Do you not believe that America is NATO is this? I mean, it's so cliche to talk about being brainwashed. But it is what it is. Am I wrong?